The Sherlock Holmes Advent Calendar. An Odyssey to Jerusalem. By Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Nora Godwin. Narrated by Bryan Godwin. Part 20. The Noble Sanctuary. Much of the afternoon passed, but neither Holmes nor Salah returned. I was already considering where to look and whether to ask the Ottoman authorities for help. I tried to pretend for Miriam and the children, but they knew as well as I did that normality had disappeared from Jerusalem and this house that day. Then there was finally a knock at the door. As a precaution, I quickly sent Salah's wife with son and daughter upstairs and opened the door. In front of me stood a man in Ottoman uniform, with a turban and a full bearded dark face. Immediately all sorts of thoughts shot through my head. Had he been sent to bring me the news of Holmes's death? Or maybe he had just suffered an injury and was in a hospital where the messenger would lead me. It couldn't be changed anyway, so I said solemnly, "Good afternoon, how can I help you?" The Ottoman did not answer. Instead, he pushed me aside and forcefully entered the door. This was not only extremely rude, but also very threatening. "Do you mind?" I protested. "What is the point of this impertinent behavior? What do you want in Salah's house?" Since I still received no response, I added, "Do you have a judicial search warrant?" The intruder laughed. "Search warrant?" asked a voice familiar to me. "Watson, do you really think the Mutasarrif of Jerusalem needs a search warrant?" The supposed Ottoman took off his turban, pulled the glued beard off his chin and cheek, and began to wipe the paint from his face with a handkerchief, until finally the healthy pale gray complexion of my friend Sherlock Holmes reappeared. "Holmes, thank God!" I shouted. "But what's the point of this silly Oriental facade?" "I did say," Holmes said calmly, "that the Ottoman governor would visit the Al-Aqsa Mosque today, and I had to keep that promise." "You were with Ibrahim Haki at the Temple Mount?" I asked. Holmes shook his head. "But no, the real Mutasarrif is in his palace and undoubtedly has more important things to do than to participate in my productions. In addition, the risk would have been too high." "So he rejected your request yesterday?" I asked. "I didn't even ask him," Holmes explained, "but he was kind enough to lend me one of his uniforms and provide me with 4 of his men." Slowly, I realized what my friend had done this afternoon. "You disguised yourself as the governor and went to the Temple Mount?" I suspected. "Well, that was probably necessary," Holmes confirmed. "After all, as an English Christian, you do not get access to the noble sanctuary. By the way, a very impressive facility. Too bad you weren't there. The Dome of the Rock is also a wonderful testimony." "Holmes!" I interrupted my friend. "You weren't on the Temple Mount to admire a golden dome. What happened?" With a satisfied face, Holmes announced, "My plan has worked. The trap snapped shut as expected." "You played the decoy," I noted, "in the clothing of the Mutasarrif. Why didn't you tell me about your plan in advance?" "A necessary precaution," Holmes replied. "Forgive the secrecy. In any case, it has come as I had predicted. Of course, the Zealots did not want to miss this opportunity. They have planned an attack, however, it was poorly thought out. As I said, if we force them to improvise, they will make mistakes." "Hopefully no one was harmed," I said, a little worried. "I'm fine, thank you," said my unharmed friend. "Take a seat, I will give you a full report." I did as suggested and sat down on the seat cushions of the atrium. Holmes, on the other hand, kept walking around the room. "After I left you, I went to the agreed meeting point with the 4 soldiers who were supposed to assist me. They had the uniform with them, which I put on. I bought a false beard on the market on the way. Imagine the cheeky dealer even wanted to haggle. Be that as it may, I went to the Temple Mount with my little military escort. However, I entered the Al-Aqsa Mosque, where the governor intended to pray alone, because of course no armed soldiers were allowed in the building. As I had expected, 2 zealots lurked there to abduct Ibrahim Haki. Of course, this would have been a priceless means of exerting pressure, which is why they were so easily trapped and carried out such a vaguely planned deed. You can certainly imagine their disappointment when I identified myself as Sherlock Holmes. They recognized the hopelessness of their situation, since they could not now show a usable hostage to extort free escort with. Therefore, I was able to persuade the 2 of them to give up. The 3 of us left the mosque, and the zealots turned themselves in to the soldiers, who immediately disarmed them and took them into custody. They were taken to a prison where I was given the opportunity to question them. I must say, I commented on the preliminary report, this was once again a remarkable plan that was well executed. And did the two zealots reveal useful information? Indirectly, Holmes replied. One of them we knew as our kidnapper, who had abandoned us at the banks of the Jordan River. The other one was his brother. I understood the clue and stated, the two detainees are Jacob and Simon Geiger, the former settlers of the Sea of Galilee. Correct, my dear Watson, Holmes confirmed. Other than that, however, they were not too eager to provide information. They stated that the Zealotic Popular Front was not a big group, and that they themselves had staged its existence and orchestrated all the attacks. According to them, they are the only members of this terror cell. Well, that would solve the case, I said, but I'm afraid it won't be that easy. Of course not, Holmes replied, because Simon and Jacob are not telling the truth. They could have done an arson or explosive attack together, but would never have been able to stage the incident at the Western Wall. This requires more men. And besides, we know better. There were 4 men who attacked us on Mount Zion, so the arrested zealots are only trying to cover their comrades. Under no circumstances would they betray them. Then you should squeeze them like lemons, I shouted, a little careless. They will talk then. Holmes shook his head. I had the notion that, he replied, those two would remain persistently silent even under the most brutal medieval torture methods. Therefore, I also assured the Ottomans that the prisoners had already said everything they knew, which helped propel my investigation considerably. They are merely henchmen, which in my opinion is not entirely wrong. In any case, any further coercive measure that would be taken would be absolutely pointless. I was surprised and asked, You protected the two of them from more intensive questioning by the Ottoman authorities. More than that, Holmes added, I might have also obtained that Jacob and Simon Geiger are not hit by the full severity of the law. They are misguided men who have only fallen on a temporary path. They still have their lives ahead of them. I frowned and said, What will happen to them? They will only be charged and convicted of damage to property, Holmes assured. After a few months in a Turkish prison, which is certainly no fun, they will be purified. After that, however, they are expelled from the country. They will have to leave the Ottoman Empire and will be deported to their homeland, to Germany. That's a lot of leniency for insurgents, I noted. One could have easily made an example of them. The Ottomans are not stupid, Holmes said. They know as well as we do that there must be not only accomplices, but also a leader. They must be caught and held accountable, and they also know that in their current situation it would be absurd to create martyrs. All well and good, I replied after a short reflection. But do we even have a new track now? Yes, Holmes claimed with satisfaction. After Jacob and Simon realized that they would save themselves from a miserable life in a Turkish dungeon or even from execution, they finally became a little more cooperative. They praised my righteous and godly commitment in their favor, even though we were on different sides. Therefore, it was important to them to at least give me a hint, in the hope that this would ultimately lead me on the right path of salvation. We do not need the right path of salvation, I replied impatiently, but the right trace to the accomplices of the two. Calm down, Watson, my friend continued. With their hint, the two brothers opened up a chance for both. They said that we should look for the star of Bethlehem. Everything else will fall into place. For God's sakes, Holmes, what nonsense is that again? I asked, irritated. That should be our hint? This is the result of all your admittedly extensive efforts around your operation on the Temple Mount. Who are we, the Three Kings? Holmes continued to radiate great confidence and said, With Salah, we would be 3 after all. It's great that you haven't lost your sense of humor, I attested. However, I'm not so sure about your criminalistic intuition. Everything is fine with that, Holmes assured. And it also tells me that we are not going to make any progress here in Jerusalem. Jacob and Simon's reference may have been cryptic for reasons of self-protection, but it was unambiguous. I took a deep breath so that Holmes could hear my doubts, and rose from my seat cushion. Whatever, I said. Let's just go to Bethlehem. It's Christmas soon anyway. Since Salah had still not appeared in the meantime, we decided to pick him up from his city office, where we suspected him. We made the short way and noticed on the streets that the martial presence of the Ottoman army had been reduced a little. When we arrived in front of the building after a few moments, Holmes immediately discovered that something was wrong. "Look, Watson," he said. "The door was obviously broken open. Someone who clearly had no key must have entered." My friend carefully pushed open the damaged front door, but there was no sound inside. Slowly we entered. That Salah was not present was one thing. The other, however, was more important. The whole office had been ransacked. Tables and shelves had been knocked over, chairs broken, papers torn from the file folders. On the floor were shards, books, writing instruments, and clothes. Someone had gone to great lengths to destroy the facility. A new attempt at intimidation by the zealots, I speculated. "Not only that," Holmes replied as he picked up an oriental headgear that had been messed up. "This is undoubtedly Salah's turban. That means he was here when the break-in happened." "I hope he's unharmed," I shouted. We quickly took a closer look, picked up 2 shelves, but could not find a human body anywhere. "The good thing is," Holmes stated, "that Salah was apparently not killed in the course of the raid, because then his body would be here. The bad news is that he was probably taken away. Salah was kidnapped by the zealots."